Hey guys, what's up? What do you mean, where have I been? I've been working! Hey guys, what's up? So, I know this is not exactly ideal, and I don't have the cool background, but someone's sleeping in the room with the cool background, and it's like every time I try to record, something happens, or I gotta run an errand, there's always something getting in the way! So, but I wanted to get this out because I know I am way behind schedule on the videos that I wanted to put up, to say nothing of just simply putting up videos, period. But I'm recording this right now, and I'm recording another one right after this one that I want to put up later, which is something that's been on my mind for a while. I got a lot of things on my mind. What else is new, right? But it's something that I really wanted to get off my chest, and it's something that's probably going to piss off a few people. And so I decided I would do this video first instead, because considering that I hadn't been on the channel for a while, to then come back immediately with a heavy philosophical, slightly political topic, well, not really slightly, whatever, to jump on that topic, that really would just, that would be kind of jarring for people, to say the least. And while I am not somebody who makes a living off of YouTube, so I'm not exactly somebody who really worries too much about that sort of thing, because it's not exactly where my bottom line is, I still care about, you know, the people who come to the channel to watch the videos, because there's a whole lot of other bigger channels that they could be watching instead of mine. So I'm not going to say, hey, thank you, let me F with your mind for a little bit. No, that's not. So let's talk about something that I know most of us got no problem talking about, which is martial arts, right? So what I want to touch on is something that I have touched on before, but I don't know if I've really gone into it in depth. Maybe I have, possibly in a live stream, or maybe I got a video in my freaking catalog somewhere that I touched on this, but I don't even remember at this point because I've been on for so long. And there's some extra stuff that's I've fairly recently come up that I think really adds to this. And that's basically on how martial arts, particularly the so-called traditional arts, get recreated a lot. And that what people are practicing these days isn't as old as they think it is, especially when you start looking at Chinese ones. Let me say something. Let's just jump into the controversy right off. It's not really controversial, only if you want to really hold on to myths, then maybe it's controversial. I don't really consider this a controversial statement. Chinese martial arts, at least the arts that we're practicing now, those who are taking up, you know, what they want to call kung fu or whatever, all the different styles, they're not as old as you may think they are, or may want them to be. I mean, yeah, they're old, but definitely older than us, you know. You can at least go by hundreds and hundreds of years of practicing, but many of the styles that are popular these days, and even some of the not so popular ones, don't go back as far as you may think they do, despite their claims to the contrary. Many of these arts like to claim that they go back as far as, like, say, the Song Dynasty or the Tang Dynasty, and they'll have some ancestor, usually some mythical being, or somebody who gets their stuff from some mythical or semi-mythical being, you know, and maybe they were taught some special secrets, or maybe they were given a secret martial arts manual that was lost to time, something like that. But they'll, you know, it'll go back really far, you know, and to someone that we can't easily find in any historical record. But when we actually start looking at actual practitioners of these arts, the curious thing is we never seem to be able to go back farther than the Ming Dynasty. Maybe the Song, maybe, and that's a big maybe. Most of the arts, Ming Dynasty, and some even in the Qing Dynasty. Seriously, just mention an art, and the practitioners that can actually be, you know, we actually have historical documentation on them existing, like other people able, oh yeah, this guy was around, other people can verify, you know, their exploits and, you know, their lineage and, you know, their history, you know, how long they've been alive and what they've done. It's Ming Dynasty, as far back as we can go. There's Qing Dynasty. Hell, let's take the so-called the three big so-called internal arts: Tai Chi Chuan, Xing Chuan, Bagua. It's interesting to me that those are the so-called big internal arts, but those also happen to be, relatively speaking, the most recent arts to have been practiced. And I know some people are going to be going, no, Xingyi was developed by Yue Fei back in the... No, there's no real evidence of that. The earliest practitioner we can find who was practicing anything remote that they can actually say, oh, this was Xingyi or predecessor to Xingyi, Ming Dynasty. I'm sorry. Look up the records if you don't believe me. The earliest practitioners we can find, Ming Dynasty. But yeah, it's kind of interesting to me that these internal styles, the so-called internal styles, the big ones are the more recent ones. Bagua being the most recent of those three. And yet those are the ones that tend to be supposedly the most complex in some ways. Some people say Xing Chuan is not as complex as the other two. I disagree. There's a lot more to it than people may think. But it's interesting to me that these are the styles that came later, right? And yet, you know, these are the ones that are supposed to be the most sophisticated. Well, it doesn't really take much thinking to realize why that may be. Human knowledge tends to get more sophisticated and more advanced the more we build upon it. Any form of human knowledge, whether it be, you know, it could be fighting skills, it could be, you know, agricultural arts, it could be, you know, architecture, freaking culinary arts. The more we've built upon it, the more generation upon generation upon generation of people take up something from the past and add their own understanding to it and their new discoveries and new understandings of themselves and the world around them and new techniques and things like that. It becomes more and more sophisticated. And we get newer ways of expressing it. Sometimes better, sometimes worse, but usually we're able to build upon it and make it more advanced or more sophisticated, or sometimes even more streamlined, but even in a streamlined way, that's a more advanced way of doing it, a more efficient way of doing it. And considering that these three arts, if we look at it historically, the three ones I'm mentioning again, Tai Chi Chuan, Xing Chuan, Bagua, those came toward the tail end of the so-called heydays of Chinese martial arts, to then be systematically put together by the Republican era. In fact, a lot of Chinese martial arts and the way we practice them these days and the things that we expect from how they're supposedly practiced, the parameters around them, a lot of them were codified during the Republican era of China, when they were trying, there was this effort to nationalize, one of many times, try to nationalize Chinese martial arts and come up with a systematic way to teach it. Many of the things that we now take for granted came from that time period, not before. Our terminology, what we think should be the proper length of weaponry, how those weapons should be practiced, separating certain techniques for specific weapons, and then judging people on that criteria. A lot of that came from the Republican era. And there was a lot of restructuring and a lot of redesigning going on during that time. Other arts from other places, from Japan, from Western nations, Germany, England, France, they, believe it or not, had some influences as well. I don't know if you guys happen to check out a channel, I think it's called Enkamp the Karate Nerd. Great channel, by the way, if you're really interested in the history of different martial arts. I love that particular channel because of his insights into the development of Okinawan karate and how it's, you know, evolved over the years, the history of it, how it's practiced these days, how to make it more practical. Great channel. But one video that he had put up a while ago that I loved was how he showed that a lot of the kicks that people practice in karate these days that they think is typically traditional Japanese kicking came from France. They picked up their techniques from Savate. Not all of them. I'm not saying all their kicking techniques are from there, no. But a lot of them did come from there. In fact, a lot of what we consider to be traditional karate was a fairly recent invention when you actually look at how Okinawan martial arts and traditional Japanese martial arts, how they looked and they used to be practiced, the techniques that were focused on, the weapons that used to be in the art, and the strategies that were employed, and so on and so forth. You look at the way it was done then, and then you look at how it's done now, and you realize the stuff that we have now is a more modern invention. Again, check out his channel. He has a whole video exploring how Japan's reaction to Western boxing and other Western arts, and how they were incorporating movements from there, how it basically helped to define what karate would look like today. It's a really insightful video, but it goes along with what I've known about martial arts, supposedly the traditional martial arts, for quite some time. They are constantly restructuring themselves, sometimes rebuilding themselves from the ashes. We have arts that were almost completely dead that somebody decided to just bring back. Lucky, like, whether they were able to find an old manual, or maybe they were able to find somebody who had something of an understanding of what the techniques were supposed to be like, but they were, you know, hardly anybody these days were able to practice it, so they had to kind of figure it out on their own. You can make an argument that Xingyi was one of those arts.
Yes. Can I help you?
Piguazhong, or Piguazhong, is another one that there's evidence supporting that one's been kind of rebuilt and reconstructed. I believe Tongbei might have been another one as well. A lot of reinterpretations of arts are kind of rebuilding of them. And we're actually seeing an evolution of arts today. Like, if it's not necessarily rebuilt, or like somebody looking at old techniques, or, you know, old manuals, or like old teachings, and then finding a way to reconstruct them into the times of their era, the contemporary times of their particular time period, and then bring it up to code then. If not necessarily a rebuilding, then even if it was currently practiced, they still find ways of adding to it, or changing it somewhat, or modifying it in some way to make it work for themselves and or the time period that they're in. This is how styles were created. You know, this is how we have branches within branches. This is why, for instance, Baguazhang, you got several different versions of it. Tai Chi Chuan, you got different versions of it. Tongbei, you got different versions of it, and so on and so forth. Wing Chun's got certain different branches from that. And Wing Chun itself, as popular as it is, that's a recent art, fairly recent art compared to a lot of the other ones that are supposedly practiced. But the reason why I'm bringing up Wing Chun is because there was also this period in time where people were going, Wing Chun's useless. Wing Chun's useless. What the hell? And then they would start showing videos online of people, supposed experts in Wing Chun, and they're getting their knots rocked, you know, and stuff. And they're like seeing how, you know, ineffective it is. And they talk about how the trapping doesn't even work. I don't even know why they have that whole thing about trapping. That's garbage, and it's not useful in a real style. And this whole flailing like that doesn't even work at all. And then lately, people are slowly beginning to come around to, hey, it might be useful, because now we actually have some people in MMA who openly say they practice Wing Chun, and they're being effective. Not like a huge tidal wave of them, but they're popping up. Hell, there's another channel. I forgot the guy's name. He recently came out and he had made a video earlier saying that, yeah, I don't think Wing Chun's effective, and then a lot of people are showing, oh no, they're showing their effectiveness, and he had to change his tune. But why are they changing their tune? Is it because it was always great? You could make that argument. But another one is they're modifying their techniques for what's happening now. That's the thing. They're looking at how people are fighting now and responding accordingly. And they're also remembering how important it is to do live training and going up against a resisting opponent, which is what you're supposed to be doing in martial arts anyway. Testing the techniques to make sure they work. And if they don't work, either throwing it out or modifying it somehow. This is what martial arts do. Hell, this is what Bruce Lee was talking about. This isn't the only thing I've seen with modifying stuff. I remember when MMA came out, there was a lot of stuff that people were saying, see, this proves this is garbage, and then stuff ended up not being garbage anymore. For instance, first people were saying, see, this is why the striking arts just, there's no point in, learn grappling. Grappling is it. Because look at these grapplers crushing all these guys. All that striking stuff ain't going to help you at all. And then the striker started winning. Then it's like, okay, I guess some striking arts are good, but only boxing and Muay Thai, and that's it. That's it. Don't waste your time. After that, you better be good with your grappling. Learn some judo and wrestling, or better yet, Brazilian jiu-jitsu is really what you should be learning, nothing else. And pick up some boxing and some Thai kicks and elbows, and you're good to go. That's all you need. Everything else is you. Hey, there's some karate guys now winning. Okay, maybe there's something to that. But keep your stuff as simple as possible. Don't do anything fancy like those Taekwondo guys, those kicks. That's garbage. That stuff and then some Taekwondo guys are winning. What the fuck? Okay, but you still need to modify those kicks. Like side kicks will never work. I don't know. You gotta stick with front kicks or round kicks or roundhouse kicks. That's it. Side kicks don't. Wait, these guys are making side kicks work in the ring now. What the? Okay, but this kung fu stuff. We know that's garbage. They don't even know how to fight. Look at these Tai Chi guys getting their asses kicked by people. But now the Kung Fu guys are slowly rising up. So and I knew this was going to happen. Partially because I know when it comes to martial arts, people haven't been fighting for hundreds upon hundreds of years with stuff that doesn't work. It's just that nowadays, with martial arts not really being essential to defending yourself, like that's a whole other video, and I think I've already made a video about this. There's different levels of how you practice. There's practicing for self-defense. There's practicing just to learn the art. There's practicing, to master something for your health, whatever. If all you want to do is just defend yourself, self-defense and martial arts are kind of two different things. Like just simply learning to defend yourself, there's a lot of stuff you can do that doesn't even touch traditional martial arts at all. Or just let's go with the obvious, get a freaking gun, But I'm not just talking about the effectiveness of the inherent effectiveness of training in martial arts, but the fact that people who really care about it are going to be evolving it anyway. They're going to be building upon it anyway. Or if there's something from the past that they think is worth using in the present, they'll find a way to build around it. Or if they think something is worth it, they'll find a way to make it practical. HEMA is all about Reconstruction. And look how effective those guys are. I mean, unless you're completely ignorant or you're just living in denial, you'd have to be a fool to think these days that the guys who are the really good HEMA practitioners, you'd be a fool to think that they know nothing about longsword fighting or rapier fighting or using cut and thrust swords or using messers or other European bladed weaponry. They know what they're doing. But they had to reconstruct what the masters of the past had already put down. Does that mean that certain things may not be done exactly the way it was done before? Probably. There's a good argument for that. But were they still able to make it into something that was that this still works today? Yes. And to think that this does not happen in traditional arts? That's some huge ignorance right there. Or some huge wishful thinking, or I don't know what that is, but history is full of examples of it. We're seeing it now, how things are either being evolved or possibly just straight up reconstructed. I guarantee you the Wing Chun, the way it's practiced now, is not necessarily going to be exactly the same as it was done way back when, like when it was first popped up on the scene. I am pretty sure that the people who are, grinding their teeth, who can't wait to show that Tai Chi is really worth something, it's not going to look exactly the same. It's definitely not going to look the same as the way it's practiced by the people just moving around the park. And it may actually be done differently than how it was done in the past when it was used in a practical manner. But there might be something in the core of it that remains the same. And that's the thing about real martial arts, no matter what it is they're doing. The core of it, the essence of it, practical movement, efficient issuance of power, proper body structure, things like that. Those things are always going to be at the core of what it is that you're doing if it's legit, which, it doesn't take much to figure out whether it's legit or not. But to think that there isn't some reconstruction going on, or at the very least some evolving going on, I really think that's just naive of people to believe that this isn't the case. And I think the biggest proof of it is simply the fact that the arts, at least Chinese art, let's just say the arts period, they're not as old as people may want to think that they are. And that in itself shows that there's been an evolution going on. That what you're, I mean, granted, it does seem kind of silly to say this is only a several hundred years old. That's still pretty old. But some people are trying to go, my art's thousands of years. No, it's not. No, it's not. Sorry, no. You can go back a few centuries, that's about it. That's not saying it's bad, but I'm just trying to put a realistic light on that. And in all those years, to think that there hasn't been any sort of rebuilding or evolution of it is just naive. Anyway, I hope this rambling has, at the very least, brought up some food for thought, and you know how like traditional arts are not set in stone, no matter how much certain hardcore traditionalists may want to claim that. And even now, certain traditional arts are evolving with the times and proving their worth. They're putting it in a new context, and that in itself, that recontextualization of it, is breathing new life into that art, and that changes it. That will change it for the better, I think. And this is something that's ongoing. So the traditional arts are not set in stone. They're not unchanging. If they were completely unchanging, well, then they just wouldn't be effective anymore, right? So, again, hope this has brought some entertainment for you. Hope you like it. And next video, well, hopefully you'll learn that one too. And yes, I know I still need to get those freaking reviews. I am so behind on the sword reviews. Oh my god. I really want to hurry up with that, but it's just I just keep getting it hitting brick walls. I haven't been able to get the Tommy mats that I wanted. I really don't want to just use bottles for these the dowel that I'm reviewing. They really deserve some good targets to show how how effective they are. And to be honest, the gen that I reviewed, they deserve to show what they can as well. I just hopefully I'll get the materials together soon. Or I'll be able to put something together. But yeah, that's one of the hold-ups I'm having. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I'll catch you guys later.